Hey everyone, your friendly neighborhood Metagross freak here with yet another Soundwave figure. This is actually the second Soundwave from the Combiner Force subline of Transformers Robots in Disguise, but rather than being a warrior class, this one is an Activators. This Soundwave has some cool funky rocket launcher speaker bits up on his shoulders, and I can already tell based on just the window that he has reduced articulation, a few less joints, but unlike the previous Soundwave, this one comes with Laserbeak. Now, if you're familiar with the Soundwave that appeared in Transformers Prime, you'll know that Laserbeak is a bit different, as is Soundwave. In Season 2, I believe it's Episode 8 or 9, the episode Portals, we get to see Soundwave, and he does not look like this or the Warrior class figure. That version of Soundwave was actually his Prime figure, and he has yet to be seen in this form yet. So hopefully he'll be reformatted soon. I want to highlight some of the cool artwork on this. Here we have on the front Soundwave's combined form with Laserbeak, and you can see that is really cool. I'm looking forward to seeing this vehicle mode in the show. It's definitely his kind of sound van, but upgraded with those launchers. And of course on the sides we get some neat artwork of Laserbeak. I really like that art, it looks cool. As well as the same piece of artwork for Soundwave that we received on the Warriors box, the Warrior class box. And this version of Soundwave looks really cool. Here is Activators Soundwave out of the packaging, and here he is next to Laserbeak. As you can see, Laserbeak is fairly averagely Minicon sized. Soundwave does not have a lot of articulation. He does have a swivel in his head, though it's kind of hard to access because of these massive shoulders. He does have a joint in his arms. No wrist articulation, unfortunately, but he's able to go all the way back to almost 180 degrees. So you are able to get some good poses. You can do the zombie. You can just do the standing at attention, or you can do, the Naruto run. Yeah. I'm kidding. I know that's Attack on Titan. I just, whatever. Soundwave does technically have some articulation in his knee, though it is not on the knee, it's just below the knee. And this articulation is mostly because of the transformation, and it's not very stable. Because of the way the legs work, if you bend one leg, he kind of flops over. There is technically a joint in the legs, but really these joints are basically just to snap the legs together. The one other, I guess you could say, point of articulation or feature for Soundwave is that he has on his back this wheel, and this wheel will turn when in vehicle mode, and when you turn it, I don't know if you can see that very well, but it causes the guns to go back and forth. Let me tilt that. They go back and forth. I'm assuming that when you're rolling it, they more consistently go just like pew 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 pew. I think that's pretty neat, and you can already tell if you flip him around that he has these kind of guns on this side, but on the back side, there are his launchers for when he's in vehicle mode. Now, mine, unfortunately, does have a little bit of wear and tear already, just from imperfect manufacturing. There's some little plastic, basically cut marks, so they cut it out of the mold there, and then on this gun, there's a little bit of red paint that got flaked off. Not a big deal, but not as perfect as I would hope, and I didn't notice that, unfortunately, in the window box. There is a little bit of articulation, by the way, in the shoulders. His arms can go fairly wide, actually, as you can see here. They can go fairly wide, as well as just down to his side. I kind of like them at a little bit of an angle like that to help boost up the shoulders. That's it for articulation. And now it's time to look at his little buddy Laserbeak. So Laserbeak, as you can see, is kind of a blue, I guess you could say some kind of a hawk. I think he's supposed to be a hawk in this version. And unfortunately, in this mode, he does not attach to Soundwave. He doesn't have any way of attaching to him, which is weird considering Soundwave has 5mm ports on both wrists, in both hands, and he has 2 on his back and 1 up here on top. So he doesn't have a way to hold Laserbeak, unless of course you just, put a hand out like that and, rest him on top, but that's not a stable way of holding him. If you want to hold Laserbeak, what you're going to have to do is transform him. Let me move this out of the way. Laserbeak has, actually, the box says it's a 1-step transformation, but that could not be farther from the truth. It's actually more of like a 4-step transformation. Basically, first you have to fold in the wings. I'm actually doing this a little out of order, but fold in the wings. Kind of dip the head down a little bit just to give some clearance as you pull the tail back. Pulling the tail back will pull the head in and flip the guns over, as you can see here. It is a little tight, but there you go. You pull the tail back to flip out the guns. Now what you can do is you can, using this joint, pull in the tail, and it does actually clip in. Though it can be a little difficult to get. You have to put a good amount of little force into it, but it will clip in. There's a little tab on the underside. And there you have Laserbeak's weapon mode, but it won't connect unless you flip out the little handle. And there is a 5mm post on the underside of the tail, as you can see there, that folds in. And it has a little notch on it to make it easier to flip out, but there you have the weapon mode that can attach to Soundwave's hands, or I guess if you really want his back. So I'm going to put it up here on his back, I guess, for now. Though I think personally this looks ridiculous to compare him with the Warriors class Soundwave. And honestly, this is a pretty good comparison. They're roughly the same size. Let me take this off. That looks ridiculous. They are roughly the same size here. This version of Soundwave, of course, is far more articulate. And he does have his shoulder cannon. That's why I put it up on his back. Let me adjust these cannons. There we go. So you're switching out the cool shoulder armor and blaster for the big cannons. This version of Soundwave definitely has a slightly larger torso and more proportionate legs. These legs are a little chunkier. And because it is the right size post, you actually can have Laserbeak mounted on the other Soundwave. Let's see here. There we go. It was a little difficult, but as you can see, I'm able to get my Warrior class Soundwave to hold Laserbeak, which means if you wanted to, you can just ignore this figure and just have the Laserbeak mounted with this Soundwave. Maybe even potentially put it on the shoulder if you're able to finagle that in properly. Though it is a little difficult to get the piece in there. On the flip side, you can take Warrior class Soundwave's blaster out and put that in the hands of this Soundwave, as you can see here, because of the ports. Of course, you're not able to get the same level of articulation, but he can indeed hold that little blaster, and it looks a lot better in this hand than the Warrior class's hands, just because of the way the sizing works. And of course, you can put it on the wrist, though that may look a little Megatron-y. It may look a little Megatron-y. As well as, if you really want, up on top. Kind of give a little bit of a Fall of Cybertron look, if you really wanted it to. Now for Laserbeak, the instructions actually recommend you flip up the wings, like so. though I personally don't think this is very necessary. I think it basically kind of just makes this gun look like Soundwave is holding an R-Wing. For those of you who are familiar with the Star Fox series, I think it looks kind of like he's holding an R-Wing. So whatever you decide to do is up to you. I kind of like this look a little bit more because it looks a little bit like a crossbow, or at least it reminds me of a crossbow. Of course, both the Laserbeak insignia as well as Soundwave's chest insignia are scannable for the Transformers app. So I'd recommend, if you really like Soundwave, check out the app because it looks to me like both of the sticker codes are different, so you could potentially unlock 2 different characters. So that'd be pretty cool if you're into the app. Here is Soundwave in his vehicle mode. As you can see, it is that same kind of communications van mode that we saw with the Warrior class figure. But this one's a little chunkier in the back. You can see kind of well, looks like 2 guns here in the back. And similar to the previous Soundwave, we have that red window. We have the classic Soundwave chest. This one even has kind of the molded badge symbol for an Autobot or Decepticon symbol, but it's not decaled, and the window itself within the yellow is not black, which is actually a little disappointing if they didn't even spend the extra cent or two to decal that up. Even if it was just painted black, it'd be better than nothing. Wheels roll pretty nicely. I like it. And turning this wheel in the back middle, as you can see, it turns those little arms on the sides of the vehicle. And that is what causes the little cannon pieces, which fold up like so, to fire like that. The back of Soundwave, I've been avoiding showing the back, is kind of weird because we see Soundwave's head right there. We see his head, as well as his robot mode chest. I don't know why they didn't just have this piece on the front, but I guess they just decided not to have the robot transform that way. So he actually has 2 chests. He has a real chest with the folded up head, mind you, and a fake chest, which is really weird. Also, the guns that Soundwave has for his robot mode are folded up to be almost like thrusters, so that he can rocket across the battlefield. That's fairly interesting. His combo mode, his combiner force mode with Laserbeak is simply plugging Laserbeak right up top here into that open port. Doing so has Laserbeak's legs pressed down on these little black buttons. So if you lose your Laserbeak, or you decide to just have your Laserbeak hang out with your Warrior Soundwave, you can still activate the Activators function, though Laserbeak is not required in order to combine them. Just by pressing down those little black buttons, those 2 missile launchers I showed in the beginning flip out with the 2 little guns. And of course, just like before, just by rolling the figure, they fire back and forth, as you can see here. So that's kind of cool. You can pretend like the actual missile racks are, popping back from firing off a volley of missiles. That's kind of a neat little function, though I'm not sure if this I'm not sure if this figure is worth the price you paid. I mean, having it like this is pretty cool, like a missile truck, and having a Laserbeak finally to add to Soundwave is pretty cool. But at time of release, this was $20, and regardless of whether you have Laserbeak with the wings down, wings up, or in his hawk mode, Laserbeak and this functionality, to me at least, is not worth the $20. I mean, Soundwave, the other Soundwave, is worth like 12 or 13 depending on the store you go to. 15 if you go to Toys R Us, 12 or 13 if you go to like Target or Walmart. So why would I pay $8 more for a figure that has less articulation, less paint apps, And the only benefit is I get Laserbeak and this function here, which I'll admit, these cannons are cool. These cannons, in my opinion, are cooler than the cannon Warrior class Soundwave comes with. But I don't think that, by comparison, this is a superior figure by any means. Personally, this is my Metagross Freak opinion, I personally would rather have had the Warrior class Soundwave, but instead of having this gun, he came with the Minicon Laserbeak. That's just my opinion. I realize that that would basically bump him up to that $20, maybe even a $25 price. But Laserbeak is amazing. The Warrior class Soundwave is amazing. This Soundwave is, I don't know, decent at best. I mean, it's not a bad figure, but I'd say it's decent at best. But I don't think it's worth the $20 just for this figure plus Laserbeak. A couple additional notes just for comparison, since these are supposed to be the same vehicle. One benefit that this the Activator version of Soundwave has over the Warrior class version is this version does have a basically closed kind of canopy, as opposed to Soundwave, who has visible hands syndrome, and the back half of him doesn't look like a vehicle. It honestly just kind of looks like legs. I'd say, as a vehicle mode goes, this is a more complete looking vehicle, but this is still, in my opinion, a better figure. Front half is good. I mean, they're supposed to be the same vehicle, so I think the front halves are really good. Those are the parts that you're likely to display. And I do like it that this is a bright red as opposed to the transparent red. So I know I'm talking a lot about the Warrior version, but I think considering these are supposed to be the same vehicle and basically the same character, it's the same character from the same appearance, I think it's important to compare them, especially since I've already reviewed Warrior Soundwave. If you want a Soundwave whose vehicle mode is more accurate to his appearance in the show, go with Activators Soundwave. But if you want a Soundwave who is more accurate in robot mode, go with the Warrior class, the Deluxe class. Now, personally, the reason I got both is because Soundwave is my favorite Transformers character, and I wanted both. And if you remember seeing my Warrior class Soundwave video, the biggest complaint I had was that Soundwave didn't come with a handheld blaster or Laserbeak. He only came with this awkward shoulder blaster. You know, this weapon was my main downside at the time with Soundwave, but this Laserbeak is really, really awesome. I would have bought this alone. If this came alone, I probably would not have bought this Soundwave, but because it came with Laserbeak, and because I already like the character, that's why it was worth buying for me. Anyways, thank you all for watching. I've been Metagross Freak. See you next time. Yes, Laserbeak, of course I've taken out Prime. What do you mean, what happened? Isn't it obvious?
Soundwave, it's time you paid for your crimes.
Oh no. Cut.
Wait, what do you mean? What do you mean cut? We're at war here.
Bring in the stunt double. Wait, you want me to fight Prime? Hi. I'm Sound Blaster.
Do I really have to fight this guy?
Yes, you do.
Well, okay, here we go.